Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our 2 games is 2005's Civilization 4. The Firaxis 4X strategy game, which introduced 3D graphics to the classic empire-building franchise, as well as a Grammy Award-winning main menu theme.
Following that is a spiritual successor to a classic zoo management game made by the studio that had previously given the same treatment to its theme park-based cousin, 2019's Planet Zoo.
We're all about the simulation today. AKA games and genres that we don't really play all that much. But you know what? We gotta talk about them sometime. Although, you did talk about Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 once.
And weirdly enough, that will come up again today. So, yeah, I think that's the only game like this we have talked about in 240 episodes. This is not a genre we touch very often.
But you know what? We're going to still come at it with our strong, usual effort nonetheless. All right, Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I've been playing way too much Holocure. I beat all of the hard levels as Fauna. You don't need to know who that is. All you need to know is that she is a character that you build around being healed constantly. I don't know how I would have done any of them as a different character. Genuinely have no idea. And I guess I'll find out eventually. I'm trying to get all the characters up to like level 3. There's a mechanic called fandom where they get experience when you use them and complete levels with them, and you get bonuses to start levels when you get it to level 3. And I'm trying to get everybody there. And by the time I do that, I'm sure there will be more characters that are being added because the developer of Holocure is insane, and he also has an Indonesian blacksmith breathing down his neck asking when the next update is because she's already 100% completed everything. Don't worry about it. But I also started and I've gotten a few chapters into Bomb Rush Cyberpunk.
Ooh, nice.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty good game. I am having a good time. I am not very good at it, but I've seen it described, especially by a friend of ours, Alex DeFreitas, who, by the way, also gifted me the game on launch day out of nowhere, so shout-outs for that. Thank you very much. He described it as, man, wouldn't it be cool if Jet Set Radio and all its great aesthetic played like a video game that worked? And it does. It plays extremely well. Movement is really tight. I personally prefer rollerblades, but you can also do skateboards and bikes and everything. And the music is so far very good, though my one problem with it is it works on a playlist thing where, like, music just it's exactly what it sounds like. It plays on a playlist, and you can find CDs that will let you play specific songs when you want to play them, but unless you have the CD, you have no way of looking up what the name of the song you are currently playing is, which is unfortunate, and that is my only major complaint. That and the maps are a little bit easy to get lost in. But so far, having a good time.
Well, that's neat. It's good to hear that Naganuma just, doing some good music work over there. And I
don't think I've actually heard any of his music yet. I know there's a bunch of people. It's like Lethal League was, where it's a ton of people. But Naganuma did at least one track. I don't think I've heard it in-game yet.
Gotcha. I just feel like we've always, we tied him to that game for sure. But, good on Team Reptile for putting out seemingly a fun release. I beat Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Did a lot of completion on that one, to the point where, like, before the last couple sequences, which just kind of flow into each other, I was already maxed out. Like, experience points were nothing anymore. So that's just always fun. That's a really good Assassin's Creed game, and I'm glad to have played that one again, to play the last traditional Assassin's Creed game before Mirage eventually comes out. And then I've got Final Fantasy 16 coming in as a rental on top of Sea of Stars coming out this week. And then it's soon Starfield time. Games are starting to get crazy.
I'm so glad I don't personally care about Starfield. I've never been happier that I don't care about a game because video games are expensive now.
Oh yeah, I mean, if it weren't for Game Pass, I wouldn't be giving it a try. That's for sure. But I'm mildly curious. I'll put it that. Speaking of Sea of Stars, though, got a couple bits of composer follow-up news before we get into talking about the games this week. Go check out Sea of Stars. It's from Sabotage. They're the team that made The Messenger. And this is one big Chrono Trigger homage with music from Eric W. Brown, also known as Rainbow Dragon Eyes, the guy who did the soundtrack for The Messenger, and also including guest compositions from Chrono Trigger's Yasunori Mitsuda. It's looking like a real good time, and I can't wait.
Yeah, the guy at NWR that did the review gave it a 10, so... and this specific reviewer tends to have tastes that match up pretty well with my own, so I'm, needless to say, pretty interested in Sea of Stars now. Meanwhile, just out of nowhere, I don't know why, Soul Hackers 2. The soundtrack is now on Spotify and other streaming services. We talked about that game very briefly in the best of 2022. It was kind of a surprise inclusion. A great soundtrack for a game that is not very good. I've now experienced it for myself. It's not very good. But also, at the end of the month, I believe on the 31st, multiple SMT games are getting their soundtracks added to streaming services. Like SMT If and stuff like that. Just, again, out of nowhere. I don't know why they chose now to do it, but hey, that's cool. I'm happy to see more of those. Sadly, I don't think the original Soul Hackers is among them, which is a bummer, because that game has a really good soundtrack, but otherwise, always good to get more of the non-Persona stuff on Spotify as well.
Let's get into our two games for Simulation Week this week. Oh man, I don't know what I was thinking when I'm like, you know what? We haven't talked about a Civilization game yet. Let's talk about that very famous song / soundtrack from Civilization. Let's talk about Civilization 4. And Civilization is a series that was started by Sid Meier. In 1996, GameSpot put Meier at the top of their listing of the, quote, most influential people in computer gaming of all time, calling him, quote, our Hitchcock, our Spielberg, our Ellington.
I don't know if he wants to be our Hitchcock.
It's a weird personal connection.
I'll give him our Spielberg, though. That sounds about right.
You know what? That's probably more accurate.
Yeah, probably.
He's known for Sid Meier's Pirates, there's Railroad Tycoon, and of course, Civilization, and many more. The main installments of Civilization were released in 1991, 1996, and 2001. And then Civilization 4 released for PC in North America on October 25th, 2005. PAL regions would have to wait just a little bit later on November 4th. Then there was a Mac release on June 26th, 2006. The game is developed by Firaxis Games and published by 2K. Aspyr did the publishing on the Mac release. Civilization 4 is a 4X turn-based strategy computer game. You may be like me and don't play these types of games, and you're like, what is a 4X game? Those who do play it are very mad at me right now, but for those of you out there that don't know what a 4X game is, It is a game that is all about explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. It is a subgenre of strategy-based games which generally involve building an empire. Emphasis is placed upon economic and technological development, as well as a range of military and non-military routes to supremacy. Among the many new features in Civilization 4, with its 18 civilization types to start out with, one of the biggest seems to be the founding and spreading of religions. There's like 7 different kinds of religions that you can go with in the game, and there's also the potential adoption of a state religion for your civilization. Because it is a simulation-based game, Civilization is not really a game with a story. So I guess let's talk about the gist of what a Civilization run is like. And we're going to follow what Wikipedia says because I don't know any differently. Quote, most standard full-length games start with the player with a settler unit and or a city unit in the year 4000 BC. As with other games in the series, there are by default 5 objectives the player can pursue in order to finish the game. Conquering all other civilizations, controlling a supermajority of the game world's land and population, building and sending the first sleeper ship to the Alpha Centauri star system, increasing the culture ratings of at least 3 different cities to legendary levels, or winning a world leader popularity contest by the United Nations. If the time limit for the game is reached, I think for this game it's the year 2050 AD, and none of the previous goals have been fulfilled by any of the players, including the game's AI players, the civilization with the highest total game score is declared the winner. Big question, I guess. Can your civilization reign supreme? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Civilization 4 or any of the Civilization games?
I've not played Civ 4, but I have played a little bit of Civ 5. I've never finished a game of Civ 5. Famously, I'm not the only one that can say that because they last so long. Like I've started 2 different multiplayer campaigns. Not really campaigns, but multiplayer save files with people in Civ 5. But never finished a single one of them. Typically in Civ 5, I have the DLC that lets me play as King Kamehameha of, the Pacific Islands, which being me, I pick because his name is King Kamehameha and I like Dragon Ball. That's the whole reason. But yeah, it's fun. It's really, really interesting to play in multiplayer, but you need to set down like an expansive amount of time if you want to even come close to finishing a game. And I've just never been able to do that, mostly because either I stop having the large amount of time or somebody else in the group stops having the large amount of time. It's unfortunate, but Civ is fun. Civ is a very interesting game. I'm not good at it, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's not one I've ever tried, and it's not a genre that's really my bag at all. But I still have Civilization 6 in my Steam library. So that's something. I think I got it from like a Humble bundle or something. Because like that
sounds about right.
That's the only way I can think that I would not have paid money to directly buy a Civilization game. And I may have it through like a PlayStation, maybe it was like a PlayStation Plus game at some point. One of the Civ games, maybe 5. I don't think I have Civ 4 though, even though that's like the one that people point to, especially on a game music side of things, for very good reason, which we will get to shortly. But as I was researching Civilization, I was just like, "Ooh, I feel way in over my head about this one." But let's see how it goes. The game engine for Civilization 4 was built entirely from scratch. Just do it right from the ground up, and they had some help from the Gamebryo engine. This decision resulted in a full 3D immersion of the game, which was a first in the series, and this allowed for easier readability and smoother, more in-depth zooming capabilities. The game was designed by Soren Johnson, under the direction of Sid Meier, and narration for the game was provided by Leonard Nimoy, though Sid Meier himself narrates the tutorial. The big thing about Civilization 4, at least when looking up what people were saying about the game, seems to be the modding scene that comes with the game. And maybe it started with this one in particular, because with the release of the game's software development kit, they released it on April 13th, 2006, the development team seemed to fully embrace the modding community for the franchise. There are developer-released mods to show their support and showcase the feature and what you could do. Some of these include Earth, Greek World, American Revolution. There are several more. If you look for Civ 4 mods online, you'll find different fan projects that exist for franchises like Star Trek, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and more. When you can kind of write things in game code from the ground up and save them all in XML files, yeah, you could do a lot. You could do a lot for making whole different kinds of Civ games from scratch. The game reviewed very well, with a Metacritic average of 94 and a Game Rankings average of 93. Critics praised not only the improvements in the turn-based strategy genre that carried over from other installments in the series, but they also noted the game's more advanced 3D computer graphics, difficult AI opponents, and a multiplayer feature which, quote, actually works, end quote. Amongst all the praise, though, there were some criticisms that were levied against the game. Small things like, the in-game announcements about enemy achievements, they should probably be displayed more prominently. There were also some quirks in the multiplayer feature, a little buggy at launch, as well as the lack of a religion-based victory condition. If they're going to make it such a big, prominent new thing, why isn't that one of the victory conditions? The game was a critical and commercial success, though. Sales of Civilization 4 surpassed 3 million units by March 2008. As of today, Steam's game description notes that it has over 6 million units sold. If you're curious, the game is still $30 US for the complete edition at full price, not factoring in any sales, and it's $20 for just the base game. The awards that Civilization 4 won: at the Interactive Achievement Awards, which we now know as DICE, Civilization 4 won Strategy Game of the Year and was nominated as an entry for Overall Game of the Year and Computer Game of the Year. It was nominated for the Strategy category at the BAFTAs, and it won PC Game of the Year at outlets such as IGN, GameSpot, and Computer Games Magazine. In August 2016, Civilization 4 placed 11th on Time Magazine's The 50 Best Video Games of All Time list. However, when we're talking about awards that this game won, particularly when it comes to video game music, the most important award of all is that this soundtrack features one of the most decorated pieces of video game music, holding the distinction for being the first piece of music written for a video game to be both nominated for and win a Grammy Award. At the 53rd Annual Grammy Awards, it won Best Instrumental Arrangement Accompanying Vocalists. We'll, of course, get to talk about that song soon in a bit, but the legacy of Civ 4, Firaxis Games also published 2 expansion packs as DLC for Civilization 4, entitled Civilization 4 Warlords and Civilization 4 Beyond the Sword. a remake of the original 1994 Sid Meier's Colonization, rebuilt with Civilization 4's game engine and titled Civilization 4 Colonization, was released for Mac and PC as a standalone game, and then it was later bundled with the 2 expansions as Civilization 4 The Complete Edition. Then the franchise continued with Civilization 5 in 2010 and Civilization 6 in 2016. 2K announced in February 2023 that Civilization 7 is in early development at Firaxis Games, with Ed Beach continuing creative director duties from his role in 6. Yes, talking about the music in Civilization 4, there were a handful of people who worked on the music for the game, on top of many composers whose work they used. But I feel like if there was one composer that we had to talk about for Civ 4, it would have to be Christopher Tin. And Christopher Chian Tin was born on May 21st, 1976 in Redwood City, California, though he was raised in Palo Alto, California, by immigrant parents from Hong Kong. He attended Stanford University right in the backyard there in Palo Alto, and that would be for his undergrad, with a brief period as an exchange student at the University of Oxford, double majoring in music composition and English literature, also minoring in art history. During this time, he also participated in various jazz, musical theater, and world music student groups. He graduated in 1998, receiving a Bachelor of Arts with honors, and then continued at Stanford to get his Master of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies in Humanities, with an emphasis in film studies, and he got that in 1999. In 1999, he was admitted to the Royal College of Music in London for their Masters of Music in Composition for Screen program, and he simultaneously received a Fulbright scholarship, the first that was ever awarded for film scoring. And, of course, he graduated with top marks. So, the man is brilliant. Let's just put it that way. He also found his first professional employment as a staff arranger for Silva Screen Records. His job was to transcribe orchestral film scores by ear so that they could be re-recorded by live orchestra for album release. He moved to Los Angeles in 2000 to try to find more permanent work, which ended up being with a few different composers, the first of which being an internship with Hans Zimmer. I mean, yeah, that's probably where you need to start if you're looking for composing work in LA. Then he met jazz pianist Billy Childs at the 2003 Sundance Institute Film Music Lab, who referred him to his first solo composing job, and that was scoring a documentary for New York Times Television. His biggest break, though, came in 2005, when video game designer Soren Johnson, his former roommate at Stanford, asked him to compose the theme song for Civilization 4. And this would enter Tin into the Guinness Book of World Records as the composer of the first video game theme to win a Grammy Award. He's worked on his own music and a whole bunch of collaborations. His debut album, the multilingual song cycle Calling All Dawns, won him 2 more Grammys in 2011 for Best Classical Crossover Album and Best Instrumental Arrangement. And his follow-up release, The Drop That Contained the Sea, debuted at number 1 on Billboard's classical charts. He was nominated for 2 more Grammys just earlier this year. There was Best Classical Compendium for his album The Lost Birds, and in the debut of the Best Score Soundtrack for Video Games and Other Interactive Media category for the strategy game Old World. Tim also arranged a number of jazz tunes for the 2018 film Crazy Rich Asians, one being based on the Chinese melody When Will You Return? And this arrangement was chosen by director John M. Chu and Warner Brothers to open the film. Christopher Tin got married in 2013, and his wife gave birth to their daughter in 2018. You can follow him on Twitter at Christopher Tin, where his biography says, quote, "I wrote that song you sang in that language you don't speak." His discography, he has 4 albums. There's Calling All Dawns from 2011, The Drop That Contained the Sea from 2014, To Shiver the Sky from 2020, and The Lost Birds from 2022. As far as games, though, he contributed music to, of course, Civilization 4, did the score for the 2012 remake of Karateka, Off-World Trading Company. He also did the opening theme for Civilization 6, that would be Sogno di Volare, Splitgate, and the aforementioned Old World. He did some additional music in certain movies, as, part of his early career, and then later in his career, films like X2, X-Men United, Dante's Inferno, Dead Space Aftermath, Hoodwinked 2, Hood vs. Evil, Sausage Party, Suddenly 17, and Tess. So, the soundtrack for Civilization 4, there's music that is composed by Jeff Briggs, Roger Briggs, Mark Cromer, Michael Curran, and Christopher Tin. It also includes music by 17 other classical composers. So, to say it was a big undertaking to look at this game's soundtrack and try to pick critical tracks, you could say that. You could definitely say that. It features compositions of medieval, Renaissance, Baroque, classical, romantic, and minimalist origin. And of course, design for the title music was influenced by The Lion King. Each leader has a unique piece of music that's played during the diplomacy stage, apparently with the exception of Kublai Khan, who shares his music with Genghis Khan. Many of the pieces are popular and familiar, whether they're straight up or they're rearrangements of tunes that certainly go with the environment of, with the leader that they're trying to portray. Others, such as Mao Zedong and Alexander the Great, have music that have been modified from earlier games, such as Civilization 3. Others have entirely original scores. But since it's a computer game, I found it interesting that all tracks are stored on the hard drive in MP3 format, making them perfectly usable outside the game. It's good on them for that. No OGG or any other weird sound formats here.
Also, probably, I don't know how big OGGs are, but it probably saves at least a little bit of file space. The first thing you learn in game development school is that music is the biggest bloater of file size in the industry. So
it makes sense. OGGs are about the same file size as MP3s. I've just seen them in more games, like I think Borderlands uses a bunch of OGGs, and it's like, all right, come on. But yeah, all right, MP3s for Civ 4. And one of those MP3s is going to start off our 5 critical tracks. It is the one, if you know anything about Civilization 4 and its music, it is this song. Let's start things off with Baba Yetu. This is composed by Christopher Tin. There's a song called Coronation, which kind of has a similar feel, and that plays during the opening game cinematic, the intro before you get to the title screen. It's a really similar sounding piece that transitions perfectly into this, but This is the one. It's the main menu theme. And some people say, oh man, Civ 4 is the hardest game ever. You just can't get off the title screen because this music just is playing, and it's so good. Baba Yetu is a choral Swahili version of the Lord's Prayer, and it was recorded by Tin's former a cappella group, Stanford Talisman. So that's where all the vocals come from.
There's another weird theme between these two, I guess. We'll get to that later, I suppose.
Okay, well, I'm going to guess it's not all of the Stanford Cardinal connections, but
no, it's the a cappella
okay.
group.
Okay. Yeah, this is the one. This won that Grammy Award. And it was certainly something that stood out at the time, and it's something in the annals of video game history where this song, Baba Yetu from Civilization 4, nominated for and won a Grammy. Just wild stuff. To see where this song has been taken and played, I mean, played in concerts all around the world, there's that for sure. But then in 2018... the Angel City Chorale was awarded the Golden Buzzer by Olivia Munn for their rendition of Baba Yetu on season 13 of America's Got Talent. So it even made its way to our dumb little reality television show that we ripped the format off from Britain, Baba Yetu. This is the song. Tough to pick, like, the 30 seconds of it, because even the beginning is like just great, and you know, a lot of talent on display with the vocalists, but this is the big culmination musically in the clip, so I figured that was the right call there.
So this is gonna sound weird considering I just said it's the only one I've played. I've gone through my entire life believing this song was in Civ 5.
Oh,
not 4. I don't know why. I knew the song, but for some reason in my brain, I think it's just the fact that my brain, like, autocorrects everything Civ related to 5.
Once you start getting Roman numerals in there, it could get a little tricky. Yeah, I get that.
But despite the fact that I have never heard this play in Civ 5 ever, my brain has just said, like, oh yeah, no, it's in Civ 5. It's not. Yeah, this is a very, very good piece, and also more similar to some of the stuff I'll be talking about than you would think. So, there's that.
Well. That's very interesting indeed. The rest of the songs here on the Critical 5 are not really like Baba Yetu at all, because we start dipping into the big public domain access to classical music that Civilization 4 was able to utilize for the different eras throughout the game. And so when we have these seemingly 4 major ages and there's different songs that can play there, I'm kind of just basing public fan opinion on like what are the ones that stand out. So as we get to number 2 on the Critical 5, one of these songs is called Miserere. Miserere was composed by Gregorio Allegri, and it is one of the songs that can play during the medieval age as background music. All right, you ready for some wild stories? When you start getting into like different classical composer stories and their different works, you're starting to go beyond the range of the normal scope of what you tend to pick up for a video game soundtrack. So, Miserere is a setting of Psalm 51 for the exclusive use of the Sistine Chapel during the Tenebrae services of Holy Week. And it was at a time where this piece of music was so sacred that the church would not allow any copies of the music to be made and circulated. And it was only performed by one choir in one church. According to letters that have circulated within his family, on Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's hearing of this, he became so obsessed with it that he went home and wrote it down, note perfect. When church officials discovered this, they could not believe it, as no one had access to the music. So they locked him in a tower and told him to do it again, which he did, baffling everyone. As word of Mozart's musical genius grew, he was summoned back to Rome by Pope Clement XIV, who showered praise on him for his feats of musical genius.
That doesn't sound real.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I would have never come across this story had I not heard this piece that, I'd heard before because of the insanely high pitch that the choir gets to in that clip. I was like, I've heard it before, but did not know it was tied in with like a Mozart folklore legend, basically. Wow.
Yeah, that's a really weird connection. I don't know if I have a ton to say about this one other than, it sure sounds like something that'd be sung in a church in medieval times. 100%. There's a choir.
It sure fits. It sure tracks. We get a little more baroque, if that's even a word. I just made up a word. Let's get to number 3 on the Critical 5, and this is Concerto for 2 Violins. Technically, the full title of this piece is Concerto for 2 Violins in D minor, BWV 1043, and this is Movement 3, Allegro. It is composed by Johann Sebastian Bach, and it's one of Bach's more famous pieces. I wouldn't say it's the most famous one, but it's up there. And it's notable for playing during the Renaissance age as one of the tracks that can play as the background music there. It was written around 1730 as part of a concert series that Bach ran as the director of the Collegium Musicum in Leipzig, Germany. And this is definitely a piece I've heard before, especially with the interplay between the 2 violins. And it's just right in that Bach wheelhouse. And I could see how this would be very effective playing during this era on a Civilization board. But it's so interesting that the tracks that I feel like most people are drawn to is like, I heard this classical piece for the first time while playing Civilization 4, and it makes the overall soundtrack stand out for the better.
I'm pretty sure I probably heard this in an orchestra class. So there's that, I guess. I always dig violin stuff as a former violinist myself. And, you know what they say, if it ain't Baroque, don't fix it, you know?
Cha-cha! Well done. I couldn't put it any better myself. But we get more symphonic with number 4 on the Critical 5 for Civ 4. And this is From the New World. When I saw that this popped up as an option for background music that can play from the industrial age, I'm like, well, this is probably my only time to bring my favorite symphony to original Soundchat, because technically this full title is Symphony Number 9 in E minor, OP 95, B178, from the New World, Movement to Largo, and it's composed by Antonin Dvorak. Dvorak's Ninth is also known as the New World Symphony. It's arguably his most famous symphony. The end of the symphony has the famous lick of bum 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 bum. Like, it's very, very well known classical music lick. It's just so good. My favorite here, and it's also nice to hear from the Largo movement, the really slow melodic line that is also very well known. I feel like it gets repurposed in different nature sounds. You can almost hear the birds chirping now as you hear the music. But Dvorak wrote this in 1893 while he was the director of the National Conservatory of Music of America from 1892 to 1895. He said it was inspired by Native American music and the African American spirituals that he heard while he was in North America. This symphony is also notable because astronaut Neil Armstrong took a tape recording of the New World Symphony along with him during the Apollo 11 mission, the first moon landing in 1969. So, yeah, famous piece. What's it doing here? I guess when it's public domain, go nuts.
Okay, so you get to talk about your favorite symphony. Can somebody put Igor Stravinsky's Firebird Suite in a video game? So
oh, yeah, that's also a great one. That's a great one, too. I just don't know if it is.
I can't think of a video game that would put it in there, but if somebody wants to do that for me, I can't pay you, but I'd be eternally grateful. Yeah, I mean, I know this song, but the weird thing is I don't know why. Specifically, I know the part in the clip, and I don't know where I would have heard it. And instinct tells me I probably heard it in Looney Tunes, and that's a really weird place for my brain to immediately go. But Looney Tunes used a lot of, like, classical music.
Killed a wabbit, No, I know that's Flight of the Valkyries from Wagner, but still, I mean, yeah, if Civilization 4 can use public domain classical pieces, so can Looney Tunes, I guess. But yeah, it was nice to see this one pop up. Had to put it here, especially if a lot of people recognize it as representing the industrial age well. But we'll wrap up the Critical 5 with the modern age. And this is a track called The Chairman Dances. The YouTube video here shows a screenshot of the start of the game recognizing you've entered the modern era, and it shows a watch that has a brand name of Soren, almost like a little reference to designer Soren Johnson. That's cute. This piece has a full title of The Chairman Dances, Foxtrot for Orchestra, and it's composed by John Adams. Not that John Adams. This man is still alive, and he was born in the mid-20th century, so there's that. His name is John Adams. This is a piece that plays as one of the possible tracks for background music during the modern age, though this piece is also heard during the credits. And The Chairman Dances is described by Adams as an outtake from Act 3 of the opera he was working on at the time called Nixon in China. The word dances in the title is a verb, not a noun. In the opera, the music depicts Madame Mao gate-crashing a presidential banquet, hanging paper lanterns, and performing a seductive dance. Chairman Mao descends from his portrait, and the two dance a foxtrot back in time together. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds very of its time.
Yeah, the geopolitical tensions of the era for sure, but it's a fun, bouncy little track, and if it plays to kind of wrap up the modern and also to be in the credits, it sounded like a good contender to put and wrap up on this Critical 5 list.
This is the first one on the list that I have never heard before. I don't think I'm a huge fan. It's a bit too cacophony, even for me, not in a way that I enjoy. I don't know. I don't super dig this one. I had to close it after the clip section ended. It's just like, all right, I don't want to listen to that anymore. So there's my take on that, I guess.
And that's fair. It's just a different era of music for sure. Yeah, you're not going to get modern music. You got to kind of keep the sort of the same orchestral, classical sounding music there, I guess. So what happened to the character themes? Well, I tried to find a couple that people really liked and put them on the cutting room floor here. And it turns out that they're both from the Beyond the Sword expansion. Oops, this is what happens when I don't know any better. But they're good pieces, nonetheless. And so the first track here on the cutting room floor for me, this is called Domine ad Adjuvantum. So yeah, as you can tell, the character themes are going to sound a little simpler when you compare them to classical music masterpieces. I guess it's going to happen, but this one definitely stood out for its piano. And from what I could tell, composers on this one are Michael Curran, Mark Cromer, and Jeff Briggs. And this is the theme of Charlemagne of the Holy Roman Empire. People definitely gravitated to this one. I also picked it for you, Joe, because that's a piano lick that I'm sure would also catch your ear, and it sounded like something that we've had before on the show and have enjoyed.
Yeah, it ain't bad. It is clearly a MIDI now, which is not how the others sounded. I assume because they were probably like official royalty-free recordings, but you could definitely hear the change in instrumentation there. But yeah, I dig the piano in this one. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably why it's cutting room floor here, though the other one adds a bit more as far as different instruments at play, and this is called Il Lordani. Maybe the upper vocal parts are real and recorded, but some of those low dronings kind of still sound a little bit MIDI-esque, and there's that organ for sure. This is also seemingly composed by Michael Curran, Mark Cromer, and Jeff Briggs, and this is the theme of Justinian I of Byzantium. That was a song that I think a lot of fans just really got captured by, made people want to look up Justinian I, like on Wikipedia and things like that, and a character that seemingly just enraptured people's attention, especially when this theme kicked in.
I mean, it sure sounds like a song that I would like hear in a church in that time, I guess. It's pretty good. I do think I think all the vocals are MIDI. I don't know. Even the like clear melody vocals are very
muddy in term of their lyrics.
yeah, and also feel like they are being played on a piano with a sample put on the keyboard. But like, I mean, you do what you gotta do. It's pretty alright given the limitations there.
What will I never forget about Civilization 4? Seeing as how I'm never gonna play the game, I don't think it's not something that appeals to me. Baba Yetu. It won a Grammy for a reason. And it's nice to finally bring it to its proper attention on this podcast.
I will remember two things about Civilization in general. The first being, I'll never finish a game of Civ, ever. I have to make peace with that. But the other being a piece of trivia I forgot that is Civ in general, not just Civ 4. Do you know the thing with Gandhi in Civ games?
Oh, I used to. Yeah, there was something where like he became like just terrible with power and I was using a nuke.
Gandhi is infamous in Civ games for being super nuke happy. And the reason for that, if people didn't know, is because in one of the games, in whatever game he was introduced in, whatever stat decided the AI, like how peaceful they would be, his was set so low that it accidentally went below 0 and like hit the top.
Yeah, like it tripped it the other way.
Like, and that is my favorite trivia thing about Civ, and that's something they have kept, by the way. Gandhi is nuke happy in every Civ game that he shows up.
Wow. Bless that.
Just as a reference. So I love that. That's one of my favorite pieces of game trivia.
Well, I can think of no better transition to go on to our next game to segue from that story. Yeah, obviously, when we talk about a fan cover, a fan remix of a song from the game's soundtrack, obviously it's going to be Baba Yetu. Who did a Baba Yetu cover? More than 8 million people have watched a cover of Peter Hollins featuring Maluka and their cover of Baba Yetu, which they say is Christopher Tin approved. So, sounds good to me to show this one to you here. And yeah, it sounds super impressive. They said they used more than 150 voice tracks in all to make this. And yeah, it shows. Please enjoy. We'll be right back.
Now, it may not be a whole civilization, but let's talk about a game where you run a zoo.
Is it a menagerie?
Essentially the same thing. This is Planet Zoo, which was originally released for PC on November 5th, 2019. It was developed and published by Frontier Developments. What is Planet Zoo? It is a management sim where the player is put in charge of building and maintaining a zoo. It is the spiritual sequel to the Zoo Tycoon series of games, which started on PC in 2001. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You create exhibits, and then you place animals in those exhibits, and you make sure they have suitable environments to live happily and not die of stress or whatever. And this includes changing the terrain to match them, maintaining temperatures. If you want to put penguins in, well, you gotta set a bunch of coolers around the area so that the air temperature allows you to have snow. Otherwise, they won't like it. Enrichment items, water and food, things like toys, making sure they have the correct shelter, making sure that there's a part of the exhibit where they can go when they don't want to be looked at by guests, etc., etc. even making sure they don't get sick and making sure they don't inbreed, which is a thing that can and will happen. On top of this, though, you also have to hire and manage the staff. You're in charge of decorating the zoo, placing the shops and food stalls, making sure that your zoo properly educates guests on the animals that are in it. And of course, you're handling the zoo's budget as well. Needless to say, boy, it is a lot. And failure to do these things well could result in animals dying, business drying up, protesters coming to your zoo and disrupting guests, and failure when the zoo inspectors arrive to judge your facilities. So the real question just kind of becomes, do you have the management skills to run a zoo? Or will you be thrown to the wolves that you built a bad exhibit for? So here's where I will ask, what are your experiences with Planet Zoo? And I'll attach Zoo Tycoon to this, honestly, as well.
I know that We Bought a Zoo was a film starring Matt Damon. But man, if this is your kind of game, God bless. Go nuts. I love that for you. Not for me. I knew that this was a thing and it was pretty recent. 2019 sounds about right. And great to bring it back. But man, you did a really good job explaining all the things that could be involved with managing a zoo. And those are all things I do not want to keep on simpatico with each other.
When I was a child, I played the hell out of Zoo Tycoon.
Aha, there you go.
A lot of Zoo Tycoon. There is probably a period in my life where Zoo Tycoon was among my top 5 favorite games. It was that and Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 and the original Roller Coaster Tycoon. Those were the 3 PC games that I played quite often. And I love Zoo Tycoon 1. I didn't play 2 basically ever. We never ended up buying it. Just didn't end up doing it. And I didn't play the reboot, which we'll talk about here in a bit, but I loved Zoo Tycoon. I got Planet Zoo, I believe, as a Christmas gift one year, and I've played a little bit of it. It's a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff.
You don't say.
And the UI is very cluttered. I want to put more time into it. So the reason I ended up talking about Planet Zoo is, one, I remembered that the soundtrack was better than it had any right to be. And 2, in pure me fashion, one of the girls at Hololive had started streaming it. And I was reminded, hey, that's a game I feel like I could talk about. It's been a hell of a series of streams, let me tell you. That's how I learned that the animals can inbreed. Poor fauna. But yeah, I loved Zoo Tycoon as a kid. It was a lot simpler. That probably helped. Being a game that released in 2001 compared to 2019. But yeah, Planet Zoo is a game that I want to put more time into. I just haven't really gotten around to it. But maybe eventually, later, if I have extra time. But in terms of the history of the development of Planet Zoo, I didn't really find a lot. People didn't really talk to the devs of this game very much. As I said, this is a spiritual successor to Zoo Tycoon, which released first game PC 2001, Zoo Tycoon 2 released in 2004. Both of them were developed by Blue Fang Studios. Then a reboot was released in 2013 as an Xbox One launch title, but it was also on Xbox 360 because Microsoft owns the IP now. But fans of the original series kind of found themselves disappointed by some of the changes to the game that were made based on the past 2 entries. I've never tried the reboot. It's on Game Pass. I could definitely just go do it right now if I wanted. But I've never really gotten around to it. And I don't know if I ever will. I don't know. I don't think anything's ever going to capture the magic of being a kid who plays Zoo Tycoon as much as I want it to. But the interesting part is, guess who made that game, that reboot? Why, Frontier Developments made the Zoo Tycoon reboot. Frontier, as a company, started in 1994, and they released their first game, Frontier First Encounters, in 1995. And they would touch a Tycoon game for the first time in 2003 when they ported the original Roller Coaster Tycoon to Xbox. And then from there, they would develop 2 expansions for Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. And in 2004 and 2005, they would develop and release Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, which I talked about back in episode 133. Frontier, I just wanted to bring this up. They have a very interesting development history in terms of the list of games they have made since Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. That list includes games like Thrillville, Lost Winds, Connectimals, 2013 Zoo Tycoon, and Elite Dangerous.
What?
Yeah, they're the Elite Dangerous people, too.
Okay.
Connectimals and Elite Dangerous were made by the same people. However, one of their biggest games in recent times was 2016's Planet Coaster, which was a spiritual successor to Roller Coaster Tycoon. I guess at some point they figured, hey, if we're going to make a spiritual successor to Roller Coaster Tycoon, and it ended up being incredibly successful and popular, people really like Planet Coaster. Planet Coaster is very good. I've played that one as well. And people have been disappointed with the previous time we just tried to reboot Zoo Tycoon for Microsoft. Why don't we just try again, this time in the Planet Coaster engine, and with some of the stuff we learned making Planet Coaster, and let's just make a zoo management game out of that. So that's what they did. And the game has received a large amount of post-game content since release. Players are able to buy packs of both scenery as well as new animals. These include an Arctic pack, which comes with stuff like polar bears and reindeer, a Twilight pack, which comes with stuff like raccoons and skunks, a Southeast Asia pack, which comes with stuff like clouded leopards and giant Malaysian leaf insects, and an Australian pack that comes with things like dingoes and koalas, and that's just a few of them. I'm not going to list every single one because we'll be here all day. But one that especially seems to have gotten attention, and the one I found where they actually went and talked to the devs about it, like I found multiple sites had done interviews about this one in particular, is the Conservation Pack, which added a bunch of new foliage, as well as 5 endangered species, being Przewalski's horses, Amur leopards, siamangs, scimitar-horned oryxes, and, most importantly, axolotls.
Oh, cute.
So when asked about how they go about deciding on what animals to include in DLC packs, director Steve Wilkins said, quote, "We tend to look at several factors when creating a roster of animals for a new pack. From their popularity in our player base to their conservation status and history, how common they are in captivity, any development challenges they might present, and how they fit within the wider zoopedia of animals available in Planet Zoo. There are, according to the Planet Zoo Wiki, now a total of around 166 animals that you can put in your zoo in Planet Zoo." And all of these animals, by the way, are like heavily researched, and their AI is built so that they act realistically according to those animals, and they move like the animals in real life. In fact, they're so committed to that when they were getting ready to release the Southeast Asia pack, pre-release footage had people pointing out that one of the animals had an anatomical mistake in the model, and they very quickly rushed to fix that before the pack came out. Crazy amount of detail. Also, I learned from all of these interviews that it is apparently a thing to ask if they have any plans to add flying birds to Planet Zoo at any point, as the only birds you can currently put in exhibits are flightless birds like penguins, peacocks, emus, etc. Seriously, multiple interviews I found asked them this question.
Have they been to a zoo before?
And they always respond with the same thing. Quote, "We have nothing to announce regarding birds in Planet Zoo."
Good for them.
I will say I've been to zoos that have like parrots and stuff, but like...
Yeah, okay, in enclosed spaces, sure, but like outdoor spaces, you want birds and things that can fly away? Okay.
I mean, there's bugs and stuff in Planet Zoo as well. You can make enclosed exhibits, so I don't know exactly why they wouldn't do like parrots and stuff, but also I just found it really funny that multiple outlets asked them this, and based on this answer, they're not the only ones that have asked them this.
I mean, for sure. One of the best things at the Detroit Zoo, aside from the penguin exhibit, is this really nice butterfly exhibit. And
you can make one of those in Planet Zoo. That's the weird part.
I'm sure you can, but it's got to be an enclosed space.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, what kind of birds are people want to like? I want to see a condor at the zoo. Okay, like what?
Parrots are the only ones I can think of. I'm pretty sure I've seen like eagles at zoos before, I think. But they feel like they're animals that need a lot of space. They're huge.
Yeah, and they probably do things to make sure they can't fly away.
Oh, likely. Very likely. So Planet Zoo reviewed very well upon release. It's got an 81 on Metacritic. It was praised for its extreme flexibility in terms of creativity, its crazy attention to detail, and massive amount of customization available. You can like make custom buildings in game and then upload them to the Steam Workshop so other people can use them. Like there's a bunch of stuff you can do in this game. People have gotten crazy good at making really cool zoos in Planet Zoo, better than I will ever be. And I am fine with that.
Simulation games with big time modding scenes. Got it.
However, this also led into the main criticism often thrown at it. For a casual player who might be more interested in simply building a zoo and seeing the various animals, there might actually be too much of all of those things. And new players could very much potentially find themselves overwhelmed by all the various systems in play that they need to keep track of. This speaks to my experience very hard. It is super realistic in a way that is super cool, but also maybe to its detriment in a lot of places. But as of May 2020, Planet Zoo had sold over 1 million copies. It won Best Simulation Game at Gamescom 2019 and Best Strategy/Simulation Game at the Webby Awards, and it was nominated for Best British Game at the BAFTAs. And the composer for Planet Zoo is a man by the name of J.J. Ipsen, but I couldn't really find a ton of information on him. I did find his Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter at JJ Ipsen, IPSEN, and his discography, he worked alongside another composer named Jim Guthrie on the soundtrack to Planet Coaster, and also he is credited with the soundtracks for the game Auto Age, Standoff, Reigns, Her Majesty, Planet Zoo, of course, and most recently he was one of the co-composers on Nobody Saves the World, Drinkbox's game.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he is currently working on the soundtrack for a Metroidvania title called Crowsworn, so you can look into that. Now, in terms of the historical development research for Planet Zoo, it was actually released on 2 albums. The original game's music is on the album You, Me, and Other Animals, the music of Planet Zoo, and then music that was added post-launch is included on the second album, You, Me, and Other Habitats, more music from Planet Zoo. And these albums follow the naming scheme of the Planet Coaster OST release titled You, Me, and Gravity, the music of Planet Coaster. And also, some of these tracks feature performances by Young Mbazo, a South African a cappella choir that focuses on indigenous African music.
Well.
So, yeah. And in fact, we're gonna hear a bit of those in the 5 critical tracks. The first one being the main theme of Planet Zoo. This is You, Me, and Other Animals. This is one of the songs that features a performance by Young Mbazo. You don't really hear a lot of it in the clip. They're more prominent later in the piece. But personally, I think this acoustic guitar part in the clip is the most memorable part to me. I really, really, really like that part. Again, this is the main theme of Planet Zoo, and this soundtrack in general has no business being as insanely good as it is. That being said, I don't know where any of this music plays. I don't think it plays in very specific places. I'm pretty sure it's just, it can play while you're playing, essentially. I think this specifically might play on the title screen or the main menu. But other than that, I got nothing for you. But I really, really dig this piece a lot, specifically because of the energy it's bringing. And this acoustic guitar sound is something you're going to hear in a lot of the tracks moving forward. And this is just a really, really good place to start, I think.
Also, shouts out to main menu themes with African vocals. That's really cool. Yeah, this is really nice guitar work, just starting with the acoustic, and then you get a little bit of the, not a heavy distortion, but still electric guitar in there. This is delightful. I agree. Like, yeah, you're a little surprised to hear like the music be this quality, but definitely here for it.
Like, it didn't need to be this good.
Right.
But I'm really glad it is. And we're going to hear that a bit more of that acoustic guitar in critical track number 2. This is Parky's Pieces. I got no idea where this plays. I don't know if Parky is a person, and I don't know what their pieces are. That being said, this is another song that I just really think is delightful. It's got more of that acoustic guitar, got a little bit of backing vocals there, though it does not credit Young Mbazo on this track, so I don't think that's them. But yeah, I really, really dig this piece. It is not my favorite on the soundtrack. We'll get to that in a second. But I think this is some nice, like, it's not calm, but it's not exactly like jump out of your seat and cheer energy. I think it's just the right amount of energy for a game like Planet Zoo. I think this absolutely nails it.
Yeah, a good observation there. I choose to believe that Parky is a mascot, and he's got a little mini game for you to collect things that he's hidden around the park. I have zero evidence of that being the case, but that's my headcanon. With the kind of folk sounding theme here with the banjo, my mind's drawn back to Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, oddly enough.
I can hear that. We're going to get more Where the Water Tastes Like Wine in a later track, but
oh boy,
I could hear that. Parky might be the person who in the tutorial who teaches you how to play the game?
Could be that too.
It's been very long since I did the tutorial, and Fauna famously did not do the tutorial.
Why would an internet personality do that on a Let's Play?
Well, to the point where every time she can't figure out how to do something, the chat's just like, if only there was some kind of tutorial. It's great. It's fun. My favorite track in the game, though, like by far, oh my god, this is Ursidai Joy. this is another track featuring Young Mbazo. Wow, joy is a really good word to put in the title for this song. It is so uplifting and happy and fun, and it has, I don't know if there's a name for it, but like my favorite type of guitar chord progression, which is the dun 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 dun. I really like it. This song rules. There's clapping, there's vocals. It's got everything you need to just be joyful, and I love it immensely.
This 100% understands the assignment. I don't know if it has anything to do with bears, with Ursa Day, but you know what? Sign me up for like all the things going here, the energy it's bringing, the vibe, if you will. I just feel I've been, just exhausted. I did like a bunch of lawn mowing like right before we recorded, and I'm just like beat. But you know what? Hearing this just kind of lifts my spirits up, and I feel good. Good job, music.
It's just such a good song. It's just so happy. It's so good.
Yeah, I could totally understand this being a favorite. It's definitely mine too.
Last two tracks on the Critical 5 are actually from the second album, The Yumi and Other Habitats. So these are songs that were added through DLC packs. The first one being Gracious Oasis. No, we didn't accidentally include a section from a later episode where we talk about a JRPG in this moment. This is still Planet Zoo. This music is still from Planet Zoo, even though it sounds like a desert area in a JRPG. And I think that's kind of cool. There seems to be like a big focus in the DLC stuff on making sure that it uses instrumentals from like the area that it's supposed to be from, that it feels like that area of the world, which is always welcome. You get a lot of instruments you don't usually get. That being said, this one definitely catches my ears because it sounds like I should be like walking around and getting in random encounters during it.
Yeah, I've got Bizarre on the brain. Like I should be walking around a shop, and yeah, maybe it is kind of Aladdin, Kingdom Hearts inspired, but you know what? That definitely works for Africa. And, if we're getting like the African vocals, it's definitely channeling a different energy for the continent. And when there is the Sahara, we might as well express it that way.
I feel like a lot of people seem to like casually forget, not really, but like a lot of people seem to casually forget that the Sahara is in fact in Africa. So like that's obviously the part of the world that this is trying to like emulate, like Egypt and like Morocco and stuff like that, which are way up north. Because when people think Africa, they think the southern parts that are more like full of foliage and stuff, and not the giant desert that lives in the north.
Mm-hmm.
Critical track number 5 might be one of my favorite titles for a track I've ever experienced on this show. Oh my god, I love it so much, I'm mad that I never thought of it. This is Bayou Diversity.
Wow, that is great pun.
Yeah, you want where the water tastes like wine. Here you go.
Oh yeah.
this obviously trying to emulate like the southeast of North America, like Louisiana. The clip, obviously, that is Louisiana jazz for sure, 100%. And the name of the song is Bayou Diversity. That's Louisiana and Florida and stuff. And I think this song really, really stood out to me just because, A, banjo. When am I not gonna, like, highlight a banjo? More banjos in game music. But also just in general, I think, especially when put next to Gracious Oasis and with the other track from the DLC that I'll talk about in the cutting room floor, like, man, J.J. Ipsen did a great job just sort of emulating these different styles of music from all around the world and making them feel unique in a way that is super cool but still fits in with the game. I really, really dig this, and Biodiversity is a fantastic title for a track.
Gotta give it its props, for sure. Yeah, it can't have been easy to have, such a wide range and diversity of musical styles and areas that you're trying to emulate, but this is done so well. I just really appreciate like how full the instrumentation sounds for each of these, and this one in particular, though it does give me the mental imagery of animals running amok on Bourbon Street. And that's just great.
So for tracks on the cutting room floor, I have one from the first album and one from the second. The one from the main game, this is Two Flamingos. I'm gonna be honest, I don't actually know 100% why this caught my ear so well. Obviously, like, I like acoustic guitar, but it's gotta be more than that. This is a very simple piece. The melody that you hear in the clip is the whole song, but it adds instrumentation as the song goes on, which is kinda cool, but I figured, like, the very beginning is the best representation of the track itself, especially given the 20-second time limit. But I don't know, something about this song just really, really caught my ear, and I dig it a lot.
Yeah, scratch what I said about a full orchestration. But, sometimes less is more. And if you're trying to have like a poignant moment, especially with a certain setting or anything like that, just having acoustic guitar like this can be very effective. It kind of takes me back to like different kind of emotional moments from different games, or just someone working on an indie rock album. And you know what? That's excellent. This is really nice here on the cutting room floor. As someone who also plays guitar, I'm taken with this.
And then for another track from the DLC, this is Lapland Folk Band. This specific song plays somewhere in the Europe pack. It's got a very neat sort of... would this be medieval or would this be... I think this would be medieval.
Yeah.
Specifically, is what it's trying to emulate. It feels like a Renaissance fair.
Sure.
Which is fitting when you're playing it while building a zoo. But I don't know, something about this one really stood out to me. In terms of, again, it just feels so different from the other two tracks we've talked about on the soundtrack from the DLC. And again, it kind of nails giving Europe a different feel from, say, North America or North Africa.
Absolutely. Yeah, another good texture to include. And I just caught myself listening to much longer than the clip, which is, always a good sign. You're just kind of taken with the atmosphere and the environment, and I'm glad it's here. But yeah, I don't know if I would have pushed it into a critical 5. So I think this is right where it needs to be.
So what will I never forget about Planet Zoo? I should play more Planet Zoo. I should give it another shot. I feel like it's one of those games where, like, getting past that wall is going to be difficult, but once you make it past that wall, you're in. I just got to make it past that wall. Will I be able to? What a great question. Next question. But I should give it a shot. I'm, to be real, probably going to go reinstall it right after we record this episode. I'm not going to lie. And maybe I'll play it one day. Installing a game on Steam doesn't mean I'm going to play it. Let's be real. But yeah, when I think of Planet Zoo, I think about Zoo Tycoon, and I think about all the time that I spent playing it as a kid. Just probably one of the first PC games I ever played. And I'm glad that there is an attempt to bring, like, that kind of game back in a way that, like, look at all this technology we have. I wish I didn't find it so overwhelming in terms of all the mechanics. But again, maybe if I can just break through that wall, I'll be good.
Yeah, it's absolutely too much for me, but I love that there's a nostalgia there for you, and that's excellent. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who also love this game. And it's a soundtrack that really catches your ears. You're 100% right. Way better than it really has any right to be. And I love that. So we found some more themes in the end for these simulation games. They have main themes that have African vocals in them. They've got those a cappella groups. You know, it actually worked out well in the end for Civilization 4 and Planet Zoo. And that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's where Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasher Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts on the internet. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where you have a feed of podcast episodes, but we also have a video game music playlist, where if we talk about a track on this show, and it's on Spotify, gets added to our big video game music playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Civ 4 is not on Spotify. I don't think Baba Yetu on its own is on Spotify, though.
Ooh, we may have to check Christopher Tin's first album, though, because he threw it on there. But
maybe
that's interesting.
I'll look for it. It's possible that Baba Yetu is on there. If it is, it'll go on there. And then both albums from Planet Zoo are, in fact, on Spotify. So those will end up on there as well.
Excellent. When you're done listening to that, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. How are we doing with the episodes? What do we miss from our lists? And give us some suggestions for games to cover in the future. Speaking of that future, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Chiyomaru Sikura.
And I'll be talking about Inon Sur. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
I'm not going to act surprised that I didn't find a lot of, like, covers or remixes of Planet Zoo music, and by that I mean I didn't find any. Which is, again, I say this every time, it's a shame. This music is really good, and I would love to see some, like, of the more guitar-centric YouTubers, like, pull out live performances and covers of these songs. I think they'd be fantastic. So we're just going to do another song off the album, and I figured, hey, there's a reprise of the main theme on the album itself, being You, Me, and Other Animals reprise. So why not just end with that?
Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.